A real mutiny in the Russian army. Putin's soldiers are protesting against corruption and abuse. Navalny was poisoned. Evidence of the murder of the Russian opposition leader has emerged. A cauldron for the Russian army in Donbas. The Ukrainian armed forces have entered the rear. Syrsky's trap has worked. The Kremlin has stated that foreign peacekeepers in Ukraine are a legitimate target for the Russian army. A new wave of mobilization has begun in Russia. Men from the occupied territories are being sent to the front en masse. This will shock you. Sex parties with brutal abuse of women. The organizer is hidden. Hello, my name is Ekaterina Nesterenko. And right now, let's talk about the main news. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. As expected, Alexei Navalny was poisoned. The widow of the Russian opposition leader, Yulia, said that traces of an unidentified poison were found in Navalny's biological samples. The poisoning was confirmed by 2 foreign laboratories.
Going back to the month of February in the year 2024, we were successfully able to obtain and then securely transport Alexei's biological samples to international laboratories. Following this, facilities in at least 2 separate countries proceeded to independently conduct comprehensive tests on these very same samples. Laboratories in 2 countries concluded Alexei was killed, specifically poisoned.
Before his death, Navalny suffered from severe pain, convulsions and vomiting. However, he was not given any help. The fact that the politician was unwell is also confirmed by photos from his cell published by Yulia Navalnaya. Traces of vomit can be seen on the floor.
The senior inspector of the Nemtsov security group says that during a walk, Alexei knocked on the door and said he was feeling unwell. When the door to the exercise yard was opened, he was squatting and repeated that he felt sick. But they didn't even take him to the infirmary. They simply brought him back to cell number 16. Alexei lay down on the floor, pulled his knees up to his stomach, and began moaning in pain. He said he felt a burning sensation in his chest and abdomen. Then he started vomiting. According to Nemtsov's testimony, Alexei was having convulsions, was breathing heavily, coughing and moaning. The prison guards left Alexei alone in the cell. Belich first closed the barred door and watched Alexei's agony through it, and then also shut the solid outer door. After that, the head of the medical unit, Alexei Lisyuk, returned to the EPKT. He had gone home for lunch. His testimony also noted that Alexei had convulsions in his face and upper limbs. Alexei was taken out of the cell. As they were carrying him down the corridor, he began to wheeze. In the medical office, they laid him down on a couch. By that time, Alexei was already unconscious. At 1:25, more than 40 minutes after Alexei started feeling unwell, an ambulance was called. When Lisyuk started to perform an EKG on Alexei, it was already showing only isolated heartbeats. The ambulance that arrived 10 minutes later tried to resuscitate Alexei, but without success.
It is unknown exactly what Navalny was poisoned with, but considering previous experience and past poisoning attempts, it was definitely not a Novichok agent. Only one thing is absolutely clear. The Kremlin is behind Navalny's death. And by the way, it refused to open a murder case regarding the opposition leader. I never thought I'd say this, but it looks like a rebellion is brewing in Russia. Well, is it really in Russia? It's in the army. And even then, it's not really a rebellion, more like a minor protest. Servicemen of the 1st Guards Mobile Brigade of Radiation, Chemical and Biological Protection, stationed in the Saratov region, have appealed to Putin, the chairman of the Investigative Committee, and the Minister of Defense. The reason for this collective appeal is an organized criminal group led by the unit's commander, Colonel Anatoly Nikolaevich Ignurov.
This is not about mistakes, but about corruption, theft, and betrayal of the interests of the state. We are patriots of our country, and that is precisely why we cannot tolerate, first of all, the wholesale embezzlement of state property. Thus, in August 2025, a criminal case was initiated under Part 4 of Article 160 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation against a group of individuals. The commander of the Heavy Flamethrower Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Nikolaevich Yablokov, the Deputy Platoon Commander, Senior Sergeant Evgeny Alexandrovich Loshchunov, the mechanic driver, Corporal Vladimir Alexandrovich Laptov, the driver, Junior Sergeant Maxim Alexandrovich Izyumov, and the driver, Ruslan Isaevich Buzyarov. For years, they had been stealing fuel and lubricants worth millions of rubles using forged documents and fake stamps. And what is most outrageous is that even after the criminal case was initiated, the thefts did not stop.
Russian soldiers complained not only about the commander, but also about the deputy commander for logistics, who, according to the soldiers, steals food supplies from the unit's warehouses. And the head of the medical service is accused of extorting bribes when processing wounds and payments. But that's not all.
We cannot remain silent about the dishonored honor of true heroes. While some receive state awards and are wounded for real, paying with their blood, others, well-connected officials, buy them here, in the rear. A serviceman, the unit's psychologist, Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Alexeyevich, who has never participated in combat, received a state award, specifically the Suvorov Medal, and a monetary payment. An example like this serviceman spits on the memory of those who received this award posthumously. According to the same scheme, these same servicemen, in particular, the supply platoon commander, senior warrant officer Anatolish, and the company sergeant major Prapchikov Vladimir Alexandrovich, receive monetary payments for non-existent injuries. This is pure fraud. Military medics take bribes, in particular, the head of the medical service, Major Abdulov Denis Leonidovich. With the stolen money, these servicemen buy themselves apartments and expensive cars. Isn't this betrayal?
For trying to stop these crimes, servicemen are threatened. That's why the soldiers decided to appeal to Putin, hoping that he would influence the situation. Honestly, I find it hard to believe that this appeal will even reach Putin. But what I do believe in is the punishment of the Russian army, which will definitely follow because the soldiers spoke out. This is a widely used practice and the occupiers themselves talk about it. According to an intercepted call by the GUR, it became known that a Russian soldier who fled the front was caught near Mariupol, where he was running from his butcher commanders, and had his arms and legs broken.
They caught him. He almost made it to Mariupol. Did he think he wouldn't get caught? Soon you'll get an awesome new fighter, just wait. Though rest assured, he will be lying there completely helpless, with both his arms and legs broken, used as nothing more than bait for That is the fate that awaits anyone who abandons his comrades in the heat of battle. We'll all get out of here someday, those who survive, but there will be no mercy.
But the story of commanders beating their men is nothing compared to being killed by your own comrades. The occupier's daughter stated that her father was brutally beaten by his fellow soldiers, as a result of which he died.
At first we were told that he was shot by his own comrades. The reasons also remain unknown. We weren't told whether there was any conflict or what actually happened at all. Then, through third parties and witnesses via forwarded messages, screenshots of which I will also attach to the video, we managed to find out that before my father was shot, he was also tortured and brutally beaten. Witnesses also reported that he was not known to drink alcohol, although when I called the morgue, while we were trying to locate my father's body since we were simply told that he was in the morgue in Belgorod and nothing more, this was emphasized to me.
But she will not receive any compensation for her murdered father. At the morgue, she was told that this was impossible because her father was allegedly drunk. That's quite an interesting story. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of our viewers are from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such reasonable viewers. Write in the comments under this episode which country you're watching us from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. But for now, let's continue, because the most interesting part is coming up. And now to the news from the front. According to the Deep State portal, the Russians are advancing rapidly in the Kharkiv region. The enemy is entering Kupyansk not only from the north, but also from the northwest. The advance toward Kupyansk has also been confirmed by the OSUV Dnipro. According to spokesperson Oleksiy Belsky, the occupiers infiltrated through pipelines leading to the north and northeast of the Kharkiv region, specifically into Dvorishna.
They can't enter Kupyansk from the north, so now they're trying to bypass Kupyansk either from the west or from the east. For this purpose, they're attacking from the east. There's a settlement there called Petropavlivka. They're trying to move down and then continue eastward, toward Kupyansk itself. But so far, they haven't succeeded. Due to the occupation of these settlements, the gas supply in that direction was cut off, and they actually got into the pipeline that goes to Dvorichna, but they didn't come out in Kupyansk itself. They emerged near the village of Radkivka. They came out in the thickets there, and now on the northern outskirts in two settlements, they are trying to gather forces and attack from that direction.
At the same time, the military reports that the main target for the Russians in Kupyansk is the railway. The Ukrainian armed forces are holding the defense and trying to restrain the enemy, but the situation leaves much to be desired. In addition, there is news from the Pokrovsk direction as well. The day before, the Ukrainian armed forces eliminated a breakthrough in Pokrovsk and are now doing everything possible to clear out the enemy. According to President Zelensky, our defenders managed to hold back 3 offensive operations by the Russian Federation. They failed, but the enemy is not stopping and is preparing 2 more heavy offensives.
I am glad, truly glad, that all the advances of the Russian Federation, all their offensive missions, there have already been 3, and they are planning 2 more heavy offensive campaigns. Their last 3 missions have failed. And in my opinion, this is a very important signal. First of all, this is what I told the Europeans and what I said at the White House to President Trump and his entourage. I said that the Russians would not succeed in taking our east and that everything they are telling you about being able to occupy the city of Syrskyi is all lies and manipulation, and we will be able to show and prove all of this. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how we acted. The Russians have lost 3 campaigns. They lost because there were heavy casualties among their personnel and a large amount of equipment was destroyed.
At the same time, Zelensky announced the possibility of difficult decisions if the situation at the front worsens. This was reported by Ukrainska Pravda, citing its own sources. The president informed the Servant of the People faction about these difficult decisions, with whom he held a meeting the day before. What exactly these difficult decisions are was not specified. Let's thank our defenders in the comments. Every day they do incredible things on the front line. And I ask you to donate to the Ukrainian army. At the same time, the AFU are crushing the Russians in Donbas, a real hellish cauldron for the occupiers near Dobropilya. Azov is literally grinding Putin's soldiers into mince.
Ukraine's defense forces delivered precise strikes on Russian command posts in Donetsk region. Enemy personnel, including officers and command staff, specifically the headquarters of the Center Troop Grouping and the 41st Combined Arms Army, came under fire and suffered losses. These formations have been deployed by the Kremlin right now to one of the most intense sectors near Pokrovsk. The strike itself was carried out back on September 8th, but the scale and results have only now become known. Notably, just a few days before the attack on August 28th, these same headquarters were inspected by Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. His visit was meant to demonstrate control over the situation. In reality, Ukrainian missiles turned the command posts into ruins.
Strikes on these military targets significantly disrupt the command and control of Russian armed forces units and subunits. Ukraine's defense forces continue to deliver precise strikes against the aggressors' facilities to force the Russian Federation to end its war of conquest.
Meanwhile, the occupiers' futile plans to seize the Donetsk region have been shattered by the strength and cohesion of the Ukrainian army. The enemy was unprepared for either the strategy or the resistance. And Ukrainian troops have moved on to liberating settlements, systematically driving the Russians out of their occupied positions and turning their attempts at seizure into complete defeat.
In the Dobropilya direction, Ukraine's defense forces managed to stabilize the situation after Russian occupation troops broke through into Ukrainian territory.
Ukrainian defenders managed to literally cut off the so-called pincers in the area where the occupiers had broken into the defense forces' positions. During the counteroffensive, 7 settlements were liberated, including Pankivka, which had previously been captured by the enemy. The Russians' attempts to gain a foothold in these territories ended in complete failure. This operation was carried out by the 225th Separate Assault Regiment with the support of National Guard units from the 1st Azov Corps.
Everyone was involved in eliminating this breakthrough, and within a few days it was neutralized. The defensive operation is still ongoing. They are clearing them out.
During the fighting, the Russian army found itself in a real hellish cauldron and suffered significant losses. According to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense, up to 1,000 personnel were involved. Now the Kremlin is trying to send in its best fighters to break through to the encircled units. However, the outcome is still predetermined.
In this sector, Ukrainian defense forces managed to create an operational encirclement of Russian units, which were cut off from their logistics bases.
But they are not only holding the line, they are also launching active counterattacks. Ukrainian fighters in the Dobropilya direction are literally sweeping away all enemy attempts to hold their positions and impose their chaos.
During the latest successful counter-offensive actions by Ukraine's defense forces, another settlement was liberated. This once again has significantly strengthened the positions of Ukraine's defense forces and prevented the Russian occupiers from carrying out their plans to break the encirclement of Russian groups and consequently from advancing deeper into Ukrainian territory toward the administrative border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. The situation is difficult. It is changing literally every hour. However, it should be noted that at this moment there is no threat of a further breakthrough by Russian occupation forces in this direction toward the administrative borders of Dnipropetrovsk region.
The defense forces are also carrying out successful counterattacks in the Pokrovsk direction. We are talking about 2 settlements, Novoekonomikne and Dakhne. This has taken the issue of an operational encirclement in the Pokrovsk direction off the agenda. In addition, there have been tactical successes in the area of the settlement of Razino.
In the area of the settlement of Razino, there was a buildup of small assault groups of Russian occupiers with the aim of further breaking through toward the settlement of Rozenske. Syrskyi is of interest to the occupiers. It offers the possibility of establishing direct control over the only paved road. These are essentially the main locations of Ukraine's defense forces. In other words, it was about the possibility of the operational encirclement of Ukraine's defense forces and accordingly the blocking of logistics for Ukrainian defenders. At this point, these scenarios of the Russian occupation forces have failed.
In addition, the defense forces are conducting counter-sabotage operations, eliminating small assault groups that manage to break through and try to gain a foothold in the urban area. Ukrainian forces have also deoccupied the settlement of Fili on the administrative border between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions, thereby reducing the enemy's ability to advance deeper into Dnipropetrovsk region. However, unfortunately, the difficult situation persists in the Kostiantynivka and Lyman directions.
The occupiers are trying to create an operational encirclement of the Ukrainian Defense Forces units in the Kostiantynivka direction. Pressure is being applied from three sides. From the direction of Toretsk, these are battles near Helivka and Yablunivka, and accordingly in the Chasiv Yar direction. In addition, the occupiers are trying to break through the Ukrainian Defense Forces lines along the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway. At the moment, the occupiers control the commanding heights in Toretsk and Chasiv Yar, which allows them to keep not only the urban areas of Kostiantynivka, but also accordingly the operational rear of the Ukrainian Defense Forces under fire control. There is further advancement of the occupiers towards Syrskyi, and there is also movement by the occupiers in the Serebryansk forestry area.
Right now, the main thing for Ukrainian defenders is not to give the enemy even the slightest respite. The complex actions of the defense forces show that any attempt by the enemy to break through and gain a foothold ends in failure.
I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a massive horde that vastly outnumbers them. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine, and if you can't do that, write them words of encouragement in the comments. I know they're watching us. Artificial intelligence is on Ukraine's side. By the end of the year, the United States will send 33,000 AI-powered drones to the Ukrainian military. Federal Times reports that AI drones will multiply the combat power of the armed forces of Ukraine many times over.
A drone swarm not only enables the use of automation to break through enemy defenses, but also increases the power of the attack, since one operator can control several UAVs at once.
That means 33,000 misfortunes for the Russian occupiers. The Kremlin is once again threatening the West. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation stated that foreign military personnel in Ukraine are a legitimate target for Russia, and that in general, Western forces are occupiers.
The formation of so-called peacekeeping forces, which are in fact occupation forces.
That's an interesting take. So, in the Kremlin's view, peacekeepers invited by Ukraine itself are considered occupiers. Well, actually, this fits perfectly into Russia's logic, since after invading Ukraine, they call themselves liberators. Right now, in a single segment, we've put together for you the main craziness of the Russian propaganda machine, as well as the harsh realities of the dark Russian everyday life. Believe me, it's truly a volatile mix.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Russian news is entertaining once again. The way events are presented blurs the line between reality and propaganda. Viewers are served the usual mix of loud statements, special effects, and state-sponsored fairy tales. For example, the head of the Defense Committee, Kartapolov, announced Finland is becoming a hotbed of fascism even faster than Ukraine. The State Duma is threatening. Helsinki's irresponsible policies could lead to conflict, and the Finnish authorities will have to bear the responsibility.
Nothing can be ruled out because Finland is pursuing an extremely irresponsible policy, primarily its leadership. And so essentially, what we are seeing is that it is becoming, perhaps even faster than what we've seen in Ukraine, a genuine and concerning hotbed of fascism. I feel profoundly sorry for the ordinary Finnish people who have already been through so very much and certainly do not deserve the unfortunate fate and the difficult situation they find themselves in right now. Make no mistake, we know exactly how to protect our own national interests, and we are absolutely ready for any and all possible future development.
Well, of course, Eurovision isn't friendly, but at least Intervision is our own, our native one. Now, children in schools will be told that our contest is better, brighter, and comes with special effects. So, Hollywood is nervously smoking on the sidelines.
Our contest is so open, all countries, all continents, as many as possible. This show is of the highest world-class level, created with all the latest achievements in science and technology. I'm not afraid to say it. There are special effects there that even Hollywood couldn't dream of anymore.
And of course, the honor of representing the country was given to Shaman. Well, how could it be otherwise? A billion-strong audience is waiting to hear the song I Am Russian in yet another arrangement.
Our country is represented by the singer Shaman, also known as Yaroslav Dronov, who was also a participant in the show The Voice on Channel 1. We are very proud that our protege has reached such a high level and that it was he who was selected by the organizing committee to represent Russia at this first competition.
And of course, the classic scenario. If something explodes somewhere, it means Russia is under attack again. Even when Russian drones fall in Poland, it turns out to be a cunning, devious plan by Ukraine.
They attack Russia because Ukraine's affairs in the special military operation are stalling. It's stuck in one place, and moreover, it's retreating deeper into its own country. Zelensky doesn't like that. So they come up with all sorts of such adventures, like what happened in Bucha.
And every time it's the same story. Reality is what they show on TV, and everything else is fake.
To be clear, there are absolutely no drone launches taking place over Polish territory. Because quite simply, we do not have any operational need for that. However, if others feel they need to do so, then by all means, they can go ahead. They can fantasize if they want. These are just fantasies, right?
At the front, he lost his arm. At home, he's losing everything else. The compensation for injuries, which is guaranteed by law, is being squeezed back by the judge, the police, the very system that's supposed to protect.
Officials, please look into this matter. In Ussurisk, in the city of Ussurisk, in Primorsky Krai, I gave about 250,000 for the judge's cooperation with criminal elements. I had 150 left. At that time, Rav Valiev was helping me deal with them. We tried to get the money back, the bracelet and so on, gold ones. But he didn't help, but he took 150,000 for it. I gave it.
At parades, they shout about honor and respect. On TV, they show heroes, but in real life, they finish you off at home with paperwork, extortion, and cynicism.
Servicemen returning from the special military operation, we come back, and here we're met by bandits in Ussurisk, in Vladivostok, and so on. And here I am, I lost my hands there. I came back, and they're shaking me down for money here. And it's always been like this here in the Far East.
Margarita Simonian surprised everyone again. She compared modern-day repressions to the history of the 20th century. Under Stalin, people were imprisoned en masse. Under Khrushchev, they were released. And now the remnants, those who had children, who had grandchildren. And attention, the final chord, this time we'll have to finish the job.
You know, I remember my mother telling me, I was little, it was the early 90s, and she said that in Poland it was scary to speak Russian, but it was even scarier in Western Ukraine. Under Stalin, they were imprisoned by the thousands in droves. Under Khrushchev, all those same thousands and droves were released back, right? And back then, they were just left as remnants, unfinished business. So this time, we'll have to finish the job.
For now, the Kremlin is avoiding mobilization, but they still need to replenish their resources, so they're calling up residents of the occupied Ukrainian territories to fight. The Center for National Resistance reports that the occupation administrations are already actively handing out draft notices right at the checkpoints.
The occupation administrations are preparing another draft of residents from the occupied territories into the Russian army. In particular, in the temporarily occupied Zaporizhzhia region, men aged 18 to 30 are being handed draft notices en masse at checkpoints. The enemy is tightening vehicle inspections at checkpoints, forcing people to undergo medical examinations. Those found fit will almost certainly be drafted in the fall.
Kadyrov is furious. Alla Pugacheva has angered the dying Chechen Tsar. The most famous Russian singer who left Russia showered the late Chechen president Dzhokhar Dudayev with compliments in her recent interview. What could Kadyrov's wrath mean for Pugacheva? Let's watch.
A new scandal is erupting around Alla Pugacheva in Russia. Ramzan Kadyrov has called the pop singer a traitor to the motherland. And all because in a conversation with Ekaterina Gordieva during an interview, Alla Pugacheva unexpectedly touched on the tragic pages of recent history, the First Chechen War.
The First Chechen War stands out in my memory because I knew Dzhokhar Dudayev. Alla Fyodorovna, if you happen to see this interview, I apologize. Well,
that I couldn't do anything to make sure Dzhokhar stayed alive to help you in any way.
More than 3 million people watched the interview with Pugacheva in just one day, and now the number has surpassed 17 million. In it, Alla Pugacheva shared that she personally knew the first president of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and his family. And she spoke very highly of Dzhokhar Dudayev as a person.
He was such a decent, honorable, cultured man, a handsome man. And what a wife he had. An artist, a writer, a politician. I even feel ashamed. She called me as if she thought I could somehow help. But how could I help? I couldn't do anything.
Dzhokhar Dudayev was killed on April 21, 1996 during a conversation on a satellite phone. His location was detected and a Russian military aircraft launched a missile strike. This topic is not liked in Chechnya, so there was an immediate reaction to Pugacheva's words about Dzhokhar Dudayev. Kadyrov asked the singer to keep her pitiful empty talk deep inside herself.
The last thing we need is for enemies of the people and traitors like Pugacheva to make senseless comments about the most difficult period for the Chechen people. So this pitiful empty talk from an artist who has absolutely no understanding of the subject would be better kept deep inside and not used to provoke an entire people.
Kadyrov's loyal associate Alaudinov picked up on Ramzan's hysteria and also commented on Pugacheva's statement.
Apparently, she must really be going through some kind of crisis in her life if she now feels so close to all these terrorists. Or maybe she has always been this way. Because probably after living your whole life the right way, a person can't just change in a single day.
The head of Chechnya's Ministry for National Policy, Ahmed Dudayev, stated that Pugacheva's remarks in support of an alleged terrorist insult the memory of both civilians and law enforcement officers who died during the fighting.
In this particular outburst of extreme hatred, and being absolutely consumed by her animosity toward the Russian Federation, she unfortunately allowed herself to make a number of incredibly provocative statements that are deeply insulting to the entire Chechen people.
It's interesting to watch how Putin's appointees are once again rewriting history. Ramzan Kadyrov himself, during the First Chechen War in 1994 to 1996, fought against the federal forces, that is, under Dudayev's command. It is worth noting that Pugacheva did not support the war even back in 2002. Here's what she said back then.
Everyone is against the war, and that's why we are, so to speak, not performing these plays yet, in order to, so to speak, express our protest against this incomprehensible, somewhat foul-smelling war, where in fact both sides are suffering, both the Chechen and the Russian sides. It would be better, in the name of the interests of people who are innocently suffering and dying, really, for who knows what, it's better to admit defeat in the war than to drag out this bloody victory for so long.
This whole war between Alla Borisovna Pugacheva and the Kadyrov clan did not start for no reason. They have a rather old conflict which apparently remains an unresolved issue or a bleeding wound for the entire family of the prima donna to this day. Back in 2009, Chechen businessman Ruslan Bezarov, who at that time was the second civil husband of Kristina Orbakaite, took their son without her knowledge. Ruslan Bezarov and Kristina Orbakaite broke up in 2003 when the boy was 5 years old. In 2009, Ruslan took his son on vacation and did not return the child on September 1st. At that time, Danny was 11 years old. As it turned out, the child ended up in Chechnya. The wealthy Chechen oligarch had enormous connections in Chechnya, and Ramzan Kadyrov himself called Kristina's son his nephew and at that time helped hide the child in Chechnya.
Ruslan Bezarov and I are true friends, we are brothers, and that's why I want his son to become devoted to his homeland and people, a patriot of Russia.
When the young man turned 16, Chechen headlines were abuzz with the news that the second son of Kristina Orbakaite and the grandson of the Soviet pop diva Alla Pugacheva had decided to become a cadet. But many understood that this was not by Denny Bezarov's own choice, but the family could do nothing about it.
My dear nephew Denny Bezarov has decided to become a cadet. Today he came to visit me, and during our conversation he expressed his wish to be a cadet corps student. I approved of his choice. Denny believes that a young man should be healthy, strong in spirit, and have a firm character. He will gain all this as well as deep knowledge in various subjects by being a cadet.
The head of Chechnya personally accompanied Pugacheva's grandson to the Tsinorovsky Cadet Corps.
I hope I can handle it. I came here to test myself, to gain courage and endurance, and to try myself in the role of a defender of the fatherland. Thanks to Uncle Ramzan, it worked out.
Alla Pugacheva's grandson spent 2 weeks learning to live by the rules and studying various army tactics under Kadyrov's supervision.
Without a doubt, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
A rather strange post appeared on his social media, which left his family and his friends in Moscow puzzled.
He is a very worthy person, a strong individual, an experienced master of military affairs, and a strict but fair senior comrade. The opportunity to go through all these trials and emotions, to learn the art of war, to become a cadet of the Cadet Corps was given to me by a great man, hero of Russia Kadyrov R.A. A huge thank you to my father for his wise guidance. I'm off to prepare for tomorrow's studies. See you at school.
Danny Bezarov's father, Ruslan Bezarov, has 6 wives and 6 children. but special attention was given to Danny. After completing his military training, Danny went to a private school in England, then lived in London and in the USA. After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Pugacheva family left Russia. Orbakete and her eldest son Nikita Prisnyakov live in the USA. But Danny leads a private life, doesn't like media attention, so his exact whereabouts are unknown. Most likely this is connected to his father and his Chechen past, which has now been stirred up by the Kadyrov and Pugacheva scandal.
This year, the topic of horrifying sex parties in Dubai has attracted attention on social media. And we're not talking about the terrible story of Maria Kovalchuk, who was found barely alive, but rather about the fact that Russians are apparently involved there. We're talking about the so-called porta parties, where women are, without exaggeration, abused.
Dubai porta parties are VIP gatherings hosted by wealthy Dubai sheikhs, where rather cruel things happen to beautiful female models. The fundamental nature of these kinds of social gatherings is that wealthy men are, in essence, taking advantage of and abusing women. They commit not only sexual violence but also moral abuse. Participants of these parties or women who knew them have reported that women who agreed to take part in Dubai porta parties were subjected to sexual violence by dozens of men at once. Such models have had people defecate in their mouths and are forced into sexual acts with animals, for example, donkeys or horses. It is not uncommon for participants of such parties to be maimed, having their teeth knocked out or their ribs, arms, and legs broken. For all the above-mentioned abuse, the women receive money. As people say online, at a Dubai porta party, you can earn more than $50,000 for a single party.
If before people thought that women willingly did this for crazy amounts of money, it turns out that's not the case. At least not all of them, because this is a real business, and it is built on deception and the exploitation of women. BBC World conducted an investigation and found one of the organizers of those very parties. This is Charles Mwesigwa, who, under the pretense of offering work, brought at least 25 women from Uganda to Dubai, effectively making him a slave owner. He offered women jobs in hotels and supermarkets, but then drew them into his network of extreme sex business.
Journalists were able to track Mwesigwa down to the Jumeirah village circle area. During a conversation with an undercover journalist, he said, "We have about 25 girls. They can do almost anything. According to Mwesigwa, the price starts at $1,000, but you'll have to pay more for crazy things. I could win £1 million in the lottery, but I would still do this. It's become a part of me," the man admitted. A former manager of his network, Troy, confirmed that Mwesigwa bribes club security and uses front men to rent apartments. "I've heard of kinds of sex I've never seen in my life. The women have no way out," Troy said.
Mwesigwa himself admitted to the undercover journalist that he could arrange women for a sex party at $1,000 each. His girls can do almost anything the clients demand. There have been at least 2 deaths in Mwesigwa's business. Of course, they presented it all as suicide. The women, like the aforementioned Maria Kovalchuk, supposedly fell from tall buildings.
The tragic death of Monique in May 2022, as well as Kayla Birungi's death a year earlier, raised many questions. The families were unable to obtain complete information from the investigations, and Monique's body is likely buried in a cemetery for the unidentified.
Mwesigwa calls all accusations against him fabricated, and the Dubai police do not comment on the deaths of the women. What do you think of our news? Let us know what we should change to become better. We will definitely take it into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon.